Hi, everyone. I hope you are doing well. So, today in this message, I really want to talk about what it means to go from, you know, doing to being. Now, you've probably heard this term a lot in the spiritual community, but when you're actually new to the journey, you hear this term and you think to yourself, what does that even mean? And it's not until you actually start going through your awakening journey that you realize what's taking place with you. So in this video, I really want to talk about this transition that you go through and really talk about why an awakening is actually forcing you to slow down. Why, moving forward with just your survival practices is actually unsustainable. What presence really means and looks and feels like. And then finally, how your body, mind, and energy actually start to transform when you finally surrender into the stillness and allow yourself to move from that doing state to being. Now, before an awakening, and I know this is going to vary for everyone based on where you are on your journey, but before an awakening, most people are completely identified with the role that they are playing, their responsibilities that they have, their individual and, personal achievements, the suffering that they may be going through. Their identity is basically based on their current form. You start to believe that you are the character that you are actually playing in this lifetime. You are consumed with, your work, your relationships, any obligations you have, the expectations, the, lack that you may be feeling. And there's constant mental activity that is the driving force behind your current mental state, whether that is negative or positive. And so, unfortunately, what you end up getting is that you barely have space in your life, your days, to rest properly, eat consciously, sleep deeply. You are basically doing everything except actually enjoying the present moment. And your life has basically become about surviving, maintaining, and constantly, performing in order to get and maintain your current lifestyle, your current circumstances, and whatever that actually looks like for you. Now, the unfortunate part about this is that as long as that's all you are going to continue living in that survival mode. I want you to just picture an analogy of a moving train. So if you were, the person looking at a train moving really, really fast, what kind of details would you be able to capture from this moving train? If it's moving really, really fast, you probably can see a blur of colors. You can probably make out at least one color of what this train actually looks like on the outside, possibly the shape, maybe just how it's moving really, really fast. But what you won't be able to see is, how many people are sitting in each one of the compartments of this train. The details about this train, maybe it has more than one colors on the outside. You won't be able to capture all of that detail. And so, unfortunately, this is how people are actually moving through their life, just constantly stuck in what's to come, what's already gone, not actually being able to just enjoy the present moment, not being able to experience life for what it's really worth. You cannot process what's happening, you cannot appreciate it, and you cannot even truly just experience it. You have become so conditioned into a do or die sort of a mindset that you keep moving, and falling behind. Eventually, you are, in living in survival mode, completely exhausted, which is not the norm of how a human being is actually supposed to operate. Now, in some of my other videos, I have really gone down the whole shift of what we're really going through. Why are so many awakenings actually happening? You can definitely check out some of those videos if you're interested. But truly, these mass awakenings that are happening right now, it's almost a reset button for humanity to resort back to the normal state of being. This is how humans were meant to operate, which is not how we are currently functioning, unfortunately. And so if you are part of this shift, you've at some point, regardless of what type of an awakening you're going through, you are actually going through this reset as well. Which is where, and this brings me to my next point, is that an awakening is actually meant to force you to slow down. Whether you like it or not, that is the transition that you are being forced to really go through. And so as you do this, whether you do it slow or whether you do it, fast, and by that I'm really talking about how long it takes you on your awakening journey. And, I'm going to talk about later how you can help yourself through this process. But essentially, you are going to need to slow down. Think of that moving train again. You are being asked to slow down that train so you can appreciate it, so you can really take in all of its beauty for whatever it's worth. Now, apply that to your life and take a look at how you're shifting on this journey. As you begin to slow down, there's something beautiful that's supposed to happen. You will start to notice more details about your life. You will start to understanding what it means to feel like being in your body. We are so up in our mind all the time prior to this awakening that, we do not listen to our bodies anymore. But as you start to make the shift, you will start to know and feel what it looks like, what it sounds like, what your body's telling you. And in that state, you will also start to finally hear your intuition. You begin experiencing the present moment. And with that comes all these beautiful details that weren't there before because you were just moving way too fast. Now, I want to kind of talk about why presence actually matters. You'll hear a lot of spiritual teachers talk about this all the time, is that the present moment is all there really is. And, initially it sounds confusing because you think to yourself, what do you mean? I remember my past. I anticipate things for the future. But in deeper states of meditation and consciousness, people will experience timelessness. You begin to realize that time is actually largely psychological. The mind constantly pulls you away from the now, but you are being asked to restore it and bring yourself back to the present moment, because really that's all you really have. And that's where your true reality is meant to actually be experienced. Unfortunately, when you are living in survival mode, associated with your form, associated with the role that you are playing, you will find that the survival mode will pull you out of the present moment. And then what that looks like for you is you're worrying about tomorrow. You are replaying what happened yesterday. You have fears that are coming out of, all of the outcomes that you haven't reached yet. There is this absolute obsession with controlling things in your life. But while you do this, you are losing all the connection you're meant to have with the current moment, your body, having peace in your life, and just simply being aware, expanding that consciousness through your awareness. So your awakening is forcing you to slow down at a pace and at a level so that, your survival, which is rooted in fear, rooted in lack, need, attachments, hypervigilance, you are kind of being shifted to really focus on the present moment, because as long as you are rooted in presence, you will know how to be still. You will anchor yourself in having trust, having peace, having faith, and having a wider sense of awareness. You are moving away from that reactivity to things, circumstances, situations that are occurring in your life. Because if you think about it, if you come back into the present moment, if I'm rooted in stillness, if I'm rooted in the present moment, you're not actually worried about all that's happening on the outside, right? There's nothing wrong in the present moment. So if you can shift your focus to just the present moment, technically all the things that are keeping you at a lower vibration kind of naturally disappear. Those, tendencies to operate from those, that lower state of consciousness and having that lower frequency will naturally just disappear because your present moment isn't supposed to be, associated with any sort of a lack. The present moment just is. So essentially, by not being rooted in the present moment, we're carrying these really heavy bags around with us that are, based on regret, fear, expectations, all this pressure, all this worry of the future that doesn't really need to be there. So when your awakening is shifting you from that constant state of worry, that constant state of survival, guess what happens? Your energy returns back to you. Your body starts to relax. Your nervous system starts to relax. And your awareness expands because that is all rooted in the present moment. Now, the more you focus on stillness, the more you focus on the present moment, brings you to the next part of your journey, which is complete surrender. Understanding that there is a higher intelligence that is always in control. And it moves you from that place of ego, thinking that you have the control. You must, deliver on certain outcomes. Otherwise, you won't get the, conclusions you're looking for. Life won't end up the way that you want. And you are completely obsessed with controlling your life and not being able to just relax. And so that surrender naturally comes as you focus on that stillness, as you shift from that survival mode to the present. And, and sometimes some people think of surrender as, giving up, becoming passive about life, avoiding the responsibility that comes with it. But that is not at all the case. Really, what you're doing here is you're shifting from those lower states of consciousness and vibration to higher states. So that worry gets transmuted into faith. That sense of control, transforms into trust. You take all that force that you've been applying and you shift it to being in the flow state. And that's how you really get to reset yourself, going from that survival mode into that state of being human, right? That's why we call ourselves human beings, so that you can return to that natural state of what you're really supposed to look and feel like. Now, next, I want to talk about why you go through so many periods of rest on an awakening journey, especially if you're not complying with what you're being asked to do. Sometimes what happens is we've been so rooted in survival mode that we forget to listen to our body, even though it's telling us, I need a pause. We keep pushing and we keep pushing. So on an awakening journey, you're actually trying to redo some of that, patterning that you've taught yourself. And the more you resist it, you keep being forced into those periods of rest, which is, again, slowing you down, because that is how you're going to get to that state of being, right? Because you are so used to go, 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 you actually do not understand the importance of the pause. Now, something else beautiful happens as you go through these motions, which is the trauma that is actually stored in your body. The more you break the patterning of survival mode, we have now, seen so many ways that, scientifically it's been shown that the fascia in your body, which is basically a network of almost like a web-like, gel-like structure that is, a connective tissue all throughout your body, holding your muscles, organs, blood vessels really into place, is actually storing memory. It is storing your emotional traumas. It is storing, physical pain, emotional pain. And so that's what we talk about in terms of healing that you go through on your awakening journey. As you allow your body to rest and you break those cycles and patterns of all that trauma that you've gone through, your body starts to relax, your nervous system starts to relax. As you meditate, as you rest more deeply, as you start to feel the emotions more consciously. Because again, going back to that train, if you're constantly operating at a really fast speed, you miss those details. But now, when you're being forced to really slow down and sit with yourself, you have no choice but to really allow all of that to surface. Okay, so your body starts to release that trauma. You start to feel the emotions as they start to come up, and you have to face it in order to actually release it. This is why a lot of people will go through that emotional detoxification during an awakening journey. You'll have a lot of periods of releasing grief, physical purging. Again, depending on the type of awakening you're going through, this is going to vary. Everybody's journey looks very different, but you will experience purging in so many different ways, because that is your body now finally willing to release that trauma, because you are giving it something new to do. It is no longer, in that fight or flight mode. It now has a moment to breathe, to rest. And so all that has been hidden, has remained unconscious, actually comes forward and is ready to be looked at. So the great news is, as these survival patterns start to weaken, your sleep will improve, your digestion will improve. And sometimes, it's going to look worse before it gets better, but your nervous system will start to recalibrate. And that could actually cause a lot of issues as well until you're ready to really come through that. You may see chronic tension in your body starting to kind of decrease as well. A lot of people experience weight loss as that fascia is now being restructured. Those old patterns start to go, the stress falls off your body. That results in weight loss. Some people will be so excited about that, but again, it's going to vary for everybody depending on, what you're experiencing. But you can see, after the mess actually passes, you will see increased vitality, reduced inflammation in your body. And this all is due to you breaking those old patterns and cycles and trauma that's stored within your body. So when you are finally ready to let all of this mess go, what you end up seeing is you have a greater sensitivity and awareness as well. You have an expanded consciousness as well. And the body finally actually almost gets permission to be able to heal itself, because it's no longer constantly preparing for some form of a danger, right? As you are moving away from those lower vibrations, it can now do something different. It can now do something else and move away and shift from that old way of being. Now, the next and final thing I kind of want to shed light on here is, you actually, as a result of all of this work that you do, you end up becoming highly magnetic. That means you have the ability to start attracting all that you really not just want and desire in your life, but what you are. Anybody at any point in time can manifest what they want in their life, right? However, you can maintain that experience. You can attract it as fast as you can and keep it based on who you are, not what you want, but who you are. That's why you will see people who are in, a lower state of vibration, sometimes they'll attract something and then not really be satisfied with it. Well, that's happening because you attract not what you want, but you attract what you are. So the experience isn't going to be as great as if you've actually done the inner work. And so what happens is that as you raise your vibration through this awakening journey and this healing process, you start to become extremely magnetic to all that you want. But what you start attracting in is based on your new, renewed, and high vibration. You end up shifting from that, lack mentality, from having to chase things that you want externally, seeking fulfillment, to actually becoming that which you want. So you no longer are chasing for things. You are fulfillment within yourself because you are now stepping into wholeness. And because that is now your current state, you are starting to basically attract in things that are based on your vibration. So, overall, on your awakening journey, just remember that if you are experiencing these long, you know, periods of rest, you keep going into these cycles of long pauses, as frustrating as it is, you are being prepared for what you need to kind of go through in order to be that new state of being. So you're shifting from doing to being. And lastly, I just want to quickly talk about what you can do to help yourself move through this journey with a little bit more ease. Really become conscious about your day-to-day experiences. If you are eating your food, let's say you used to be somebody that quickly ate your food within 5 to 10 minutes. Well, now you want to eat slower. You want to walk a little bit slower. You want to appreciate the things around you. You want to really be in that place of gratitude. Even if things aren't going your way, and an awakening journey can really kick you hard, especially when you're already down. What you want to do is change your mindset through this process. So when you are, let's say, having a really bad day or week on your awakening journey, find something else. Shift your focus from that negative experience you're having to something positive. Even in the worst of situations, you can find something to be thankful for, right? Your eyesight, your hands, your arms, your strength, family around you, the fact that you have money to be able to pay for your bills. So instead of focusing on whatever your negative experiences, try and shift it and transmute it into something positive by just being grateful for it. Speak slower. You will find that all of these daily habits will help you on the journey, because essentially, by the time you come out of a full awakening, this is how you're going to be operating. So if you can start to do it right from the get-go, it will really help you. Otherwise, if you keep going back into that cycle of moving faster and faster and staying in survival, you'll keep coming back to periods of rest. And the reason for that is actually simple. When you are sick and you're in bed, doesn't matter what's happening on the outside. Are you concerned with it? No, you don't care about how much work you're missing at work because you're so sick you can barely get out of bed, or you can barely get to the bathroom. Or if you've had some injury, are you focused on anything else but the injury that you've had? No. So instead of being forced into, these periods of rest, which are harsher when you get to them, try and become more aware of what experience you're having and how you can help yourself slow that down a little bit more. You want to take a look at your day. Let's say you were somebody who was, very hyperactive prior to your awakening, and you like to be that doer that is constantly in their masculine energy, doing a lot more than you can handle in a day. We'll bring that down a notch. Start looking for ways of how you can stop overworking yourself, overstimulating yourself, escaping your emotions. Stop constantly distracting yourself. So this is actually going to require some very conscious effort on your part to start removing things from your life that don't need to be there. If you're somebody who is scrolling on your phone for 3 to 4 hours a day, well, shift that so that you can really make for, time for those things that really matter, like going out into nature, sitting still for longer periods if you're able to, and really sit with yourself. Becoming still is going to take some work, especially when you're new to the journey, but really start to assess what you can get rid of from your day that isn't, that's really actually shifting you from those lower vibrations back into that present moment. And as you do this, you will master your healing journey. You will be able to obviously become more still. You will become magnetic. You will essentially transform your mindset, which is going to be crucial for this journey. Of course, meditation is going to be your key to all of this, but even in your day-to-day, your daily practices are going to matter. If you can really get a good handle on this, this will help, I would say, expedite your journey, because you won't be forced into those extended periods of, that pause, so that you are forced to slow down. It's as simple as, taking a look at when you get sick. Are you really able to do anything more when you get sick? Are you worried about what's happening on the outside world? No. At that point, you were so sick that you just kind of want to get better, and that's all you're focused on. And that's what's happening to you during those pauses on your awakening journey. So if you can consciously make the effort to, take away the distractions, take away whatever it is that is sucking you into the lower vibrations, and focusing on, changing your mindset, transforming your mindset, so that you can get from that survival mode to that presence mode, it's going to be a lot smoother for you on your awakening journey. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope this was helpful. God bless.